What up, everybody? Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Blackwell Project. Today, we are talking about environmental racism, but we might have to call a last minute audible. But until then, we're going to keep the show going. What's up, team? How's everybody doing today?
Oh man, I can't complain. I'm here.
You right? Yo,
Yo, with the way this COVID is popping right now, bro. I'm just
man,
excited to be
it
here.
feels like it's going back to the 2020. It's going back to 2020 protocols. Like for me, I never came out of COVID protocols, but it's really it's really ugly out here, man. Like protect yourself at all costs. Love on your folks. Like it's real out here, man.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about this, right? School's about to go back in session. My kids go back next week, and I'm wondering, like, is it too soon? Because Florida is like the nation's petri dish. It's the nation's super spreader state. But I don't know what's going to happen. And with these spikes, it's feeling like we all need to go back inside for a minute. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Man, it's scary, bro. So many people I know on a personal level have been affected again. So, thank God this time around they all have made it. Because the first time this thing hit, I lost a lot of folks. So a lot of people I know are like in the hospital, laid up and really struggling.
Right.
So it's scary. It's scary, man. And the way this whole thing is dividing folks is also just bothersome too. But it's like everything else, man. One thing I realized about like these last couple years, people just take sides with everything, and life really is really about the gray area, but no one operates in the gray area. Like we're making life very binary. Either you're this or you're that, and that's not what life should be about.
That's ill.
Well, at the end of the day, life really isn't binary. I mean, some things are, don't get me wrong, but
But the list of things that are binary are probably small. Excuse me, probably smaller than anything else, right?
right, right.
We turn everything into like either your team this or team that. Like that's what we do with everything in life.
Man, listen, I've been getting COVID tested twice a week for the last 8 months, right? And so I don't really care about the actual COVID testing, right? Because it's for safety purposes, right? To make sure that people around you are safe and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not against or for anything, right? I'm like my body, my choice is for me. That means your body, your choice for everything, right? So I'm all with the people getting vaxxed. I'm all with people. Like I'm not touching that at all. Um, but for me, it's about how do you love each other through whatever is going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
you know what I
damn,
mean?
Corey.
How do you know what I mean? Like for real, because because we don't spend enough time thinking about, you know what I mean, what our last words to somebody could or would be. You know what I mean? Like I seen people on there like, well, if you get it, you know what I mean, just remember I told you to get the damn vax. And I'm like,
So, Corey,
that's the that's the illest, like
right.
that's the illest
So,
thing
Corey,
to be the last words to somebody. Like I told you so is the last words to somebody. Like damn, like that's really how you want them to remember you.
but to piggyback on what you're saying, you've seen some of the posts that I put out, right, about not judging one another, not getting so, what's the word I'm looking for? Not getting so polarized that we're willing basically just to pull out the hatchet and take it to everybody that we see. And you just hit on it, right? It's like if we're okay with taking the vax because we feel it's going to save lives, but at the same time, like you said, your body, your choice, we rock that way with everything else. And then when it comes to this, we're like, no. And then we want to demonize everybody. And we don't realize what the other ramifications are of that.
Nobody cares about that, right? So the other part is right is that we keep you don't have rights you can't protect, right? And so what our government will do is divide us into groups, which is what's happening right now, put us in camps, and then have us fight amongst ourselves so that we give away the power that we have as a collective. And so we can't give away that collective power. We just can't do that, right? Because every time you give the government more power, you give them a chance to stomp on your neck even harder, right? Because what people do is they rock with the people got mob mentality.
Yep.
And so if the government tell you to do something, right, they a mob. And so people got mob mentality. You gotta fight that, right?
And Corey, real quick, you just said it, but I want to reiterate it, right? You said vaxxed or non-vaxxed, right? You're talking about what happens to all of us.
Yeah, I'm
right?
talking about both sides. I ain't
Right.
listen, man.
And so no. So I'm saying you've seen my post. Matter of fact, I might pull them up. I've been vilified. You've been going back and forth with some people on the post. And I'm like, yo, the post isn't even really about vax or non-vax.
And what did I tell you about the post? What did I tell you? I told you. I was like,
what you say to me? I didn't hear what you said.
Me and you had a conversation, but you probably forgot. Me and you had a conversation. I was like, it doesn't matter what your intent is. Once you start to post about the vax or COVID or what have you, every post turns into what you're talking about. That's just what it is.
It's a battlefield now. That's what it is.
Every
post is a battlefield.
It's politics and religion at this point.
And the point
the
point that I was trying to make on your post is that you cannot you have to care about the safety of people, and COVID is real.
So but you have to care about the safety of people, vax, non-vax, right? Both. If they are people, correct?
No. But that's super important, period, right? Because that's why we're talking about environmental racism. But the other piece is that our government, in history, anytime you give our government more power, there is 0 times that helps the masses of people. 0 in the history of any government. That if you give it more power, that people will get better. There's no chance that happens, because when you give the government more power, the government is a smaller group of people. So you're giving a smaller group of people more power instead of giving the larger collective more power. And you can't do that, huh?
Now, since we've opened the lid on this, right, I guess we got to talk about both sides, right? So nobody is advocating for people to be irresponsible, right?
No, we're not doing
that's anti-community. That's anti-our people, right? That's not what we're talking about. At least I know that's not what I'm talking about.
No, that's
not what Corey's talking about.
That's absolutely.
But what we are saying is, like, again, using Corey's words, if we get so enthralled into mob mentality, what danger or harm are we going to do? Because we're not being analytical at any point in this process.
Yeah, like Jim said, every one of those joints becomes a war zone, right? So the thing is, I modify behavior all day. I watch behavior, I modify behavior. I do. This is what I do for a living, right? So I understand the psychology of people who do and who don't. I understand both sides. I understand the psychology of it, right? Most people just see the physical nature of it, the psychology of it, though, right? You got some of these, Trump weirdos that, just doing it because, their leader said don't do it. Those people are stupid.
Right. We're not talking about them.
Those people are just stupid. And then you got the other side who will just do anything that the government tells them to do. Those people are also stupid. But the point that I was making is that there's a way to look at the same thing and not come to the same conclusion, right? You can look at the same information and not come to the same conclusion. That doesn't mean that person doesn't believe what's being presented to them. They just don't believe the same way you do. They weren't raised the same way you were. They don't have the same experiences. They don't have the same, kinds of things going on in your life that you do, right? And then a lot of people's privileges were showing, right? Because what they were saying is that, well, now that the world is open back outside, I want to be able to go outside and do what I want to do, and that doesn't make any sense, right? Because the thing about it is that what science has said is that vaccinated people spread the disease just as quickly as unvaccinated people do. It's not about that the vaccine keeps those people from dying or being hospitalized it keeps them from dying at a slightly higher rate, but it keeps them from being hospitalized at a really, really much higher rate, right? So let's be clear about what the science says, right? So I'm worried about people not being vaxxed and people not getting taking the proper precautions of masking up and washing their hands and doing common sense stuff that you should be doing anyway if you're not dirty, right? But if if we know the flu, the reason there's flu season is because people be walking around sick, people be walking around coughing, people, they don't cover their mouth, they don't wash their hands, they go in small areas and do big area stuff. Like, you can't do that. The reason why the flu didn't spread over the last two winters as much as it did before is because people had on masks and was washing their hands because they were scared of COVID. And it damn near got rid of the flu. It's because those two things go together. Like, common sense will keep a lot of this stuff from happening, right? So it makes it hard. It makes it hard, right, for people who are zealous on one end or the other to come to any kind of resolution. And it just, like I said, it goes to Jim's point again about everything being a battleground. Everything can't be a battleground. If you really want somebody to do something and you think it's in their best interest, attacking them is not going to make them do it.
It never works.
That will never work. That is the absolute wrong tactic. If you actually want people to go do something and you think it's the common sense thing for them to do. If you've ever worked with children, right, and you attack them in any way, they become defensive right away.
I mean, I think that's humans. That's
right.
I mean, some common sense humans, like, if you're attacking me, I'm not just going to shut you out, because my thing is, you can make your greatest strides listening to people who attack the things that you do, right? Because you can see where your weaknesses are, because those people can see things that you can't see because you're you. You know what I mean? So I don't really take personal attacks that personal most of the time. I'm like, damn, do I really do that? And you know what I mean? Like, for me, that's how I think.
Most people, when you come at them that way, I think it's human nature to get defensive.
No, it is. It is human nature. But the thing about it is that child will shut down immediately.
But let's come back. Let's just piggyback on that, right, about attacking. And so again, my posts were talking about us being a community, vaxxed, unvaxxed. And by the way, this is not an unvaxxed show. We are not promoting not being vaxxed. So please don't get that misconstrued
at all.
But what Corey just said, right, when we become so diametrically opposed, when we're at so far opposite ends of things, and then we want to attack one another, well, then you're defeating the whole point of being vaxxed.
Because nobody's going to get anything done.
Right. And people don't realize that, because when you see what's coming down the pike, again, it's history. It's happened before. It's happened a lot before. And so if we get further paralyzed, you're going to see a lot more fights happening. I mean, fights have already happening now, but you're going to see a lot more fights happening. And that's going to be really, really sad. Because then that's going to spread into other things.
Because I think it's stupid when stores say put a mask on to come in and people don't do it. Like, that's just like, if they ask you to put a mask on, put a stupid mask on. Like, what's wrong with you? Like,
what bothers me the most? What bothers me the most about that is when stores do it, people get upset and they want to complain about it. I'm like, well, go somewhere. Like, if you really are that deep into your belief, just go somewhere else. Yeah. I hate people that fight to be served somewhere where you're not wanted. I mean, it goes beyond mask and not mask, but just in general, like, go somewhere else. Like, this is what it's supposed to be about, right? If I don't want you in here because you don't wear a mask, just go somewhere else.
Don't go.
Exactly. And so part of the reason, I'm talking about this, and I'm glad Courtney's on. Courtney's coming. Because again, we get polarized and we get pulled onto these sides, and then when that happens, everybody loses. Like Jay-Z said, when there's a family feud, nobody wins.
Yeah, man.
So we got to keep that in.
Nobody wins when the family feuds, man.
Queen Courtney, how are you?
What's going on, y'all?
Hey, lady, what's going on?
Listen. You're just excited when the smoke detectors work.
All right. So y'all got Fire Marshal Bill out there?
Listen,
let me tell you something.
I really think it's our pots, because my son did it the first time and I was like, yo, why are you trying to set the house on fire? But then it was me and everybody's looking at me like,
why'd you try to set the house on fire?
Right. I'm like, but it wasn't me. And it was we had to open all the doors, we had to open the windows, Ty had to pull out the broom and start. Listen, y'all.
What was you cooking?
I was doing pan-seared scallops.
Ooh,
They were
nice
delicious.
bougie
Y'all
black food right
fancy.
there.
Y'all eat fancy, and you know what I mean. I want to be like
Scallops?
y'all.
Y'all bring a charcuterie board out too?
Damn, Jimmy, you beat me to the
You
punch.
know what? I can't
I
even
know.
go. But here's the thing. So interesting enough, I think Monica and I have talked about this. I think did I get Monica hooked on it? So they were butcher box scallops.
Oh yeah, she's hooked.
And first of all, this meat and this fish from them is probably amazing. I really love it. So they send you a box of meat to your door.
Yo,
And
It's
the
like
cod the
it's
cod
like
is
the old
everything.
5-star. You remember 5-star? Who anybody had 5-star before? Like my mom used to have this service called 5-star where they would send like 100 pounds of like
Pounds.
different like of different kinds of meats. No, but they would like come every 6 months, and like they would give you a deep freezer or a couple deep freezers, and then they would come out every quarter, and she would pay. They would come out every quarter, and like so my mom would like giving away food. Like we would have barbecues and cookouts, and we'd be
All I
eating.
know is the butcher box cod is everything, yo.
I haven't had the cod yet, but Ty said he remembers it.
Yeah.
Ty!
Doc,
Yeah.
Ty, what's up, good brother?
Yes, oh,
How
what's
y'all
going
doing?
on?
This is
Yo,
Ronnie
she trying to
B.
burn the house down, bro?
Huh?
She trying to burn the house down or what?
That was her. I was old school with the broom. Faded the smoke detector.
hilarious.
Oh god.
They were
Hilarious.
like looking at us like, yo, because these joints is loud too.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Well, at least you know they work.
Yeah.
well, they definitely work, but I made it with a lemon butter garlic sauce.
Oh man, y'all making me hungry now.
So
Oh,
it was
man.
good. Good.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
Dinner
yeah.
at Courtney and Tosh.
yeah, y'all got. I told you we have to come over and do a podcast over here.
Hey, listen,
All right, we
say
can make that
say
happen.
when. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
got this Pfizer running through my blood. I'm ready to go anywhere. I'm joking.
You might have to get the booster.
I ain't
first,
trying to get.
bro.
I'm not trying to get attacked. I'm just joking,
You
y'all.
might have to get the booster first. You might have to get the booster first.
So I know
Yeah,
I came all the way. So Jennifer popped on. She said she's late. No, Jennifer, I'm just super duper late because I try to. We had some pan searing and smoke, and things fell apart. So you're not late. At
Amazing.
all.
That's an amazing book, by the way.
All right, well, listen, y'all, we a little delayed, but tonight we're talking about environmental racism, and I didn't want to start the show because it was Courtney's idea, and it was a wonderful idea, but Courtney's here now, so we're going to hop into the main topic of the night. We're a little off, right? We got to call the audible, so we're going to reel it back in right now. So we're going to talk about environmental racism. A lot of people don't realize just how much racism happens on the environmental level. Everything from Flint to New Orleans to Newark. I think Courtney did some research and found some places in Cleveland. There's a lot of shenanigans on
Logan,
environmental.
right here in Philly, Logan.
Oh Lord, there's a lot of shenanigans happening on environmental.
Hey, listen.
And why? Hold on, Jimmy. And why that's so important, right? When you have these environmental factors, it's really hard to think clearly, and you're getting more disease, and so then you're sick, and so then getting to the bag becomes really, really hard, y'all. So let's get into this topic. Jimmy, what were you about to say?
No, I was going to say, would you consider a move? Someone might consider that environmental racism.
Man,
Even the after effects,
yeah, they burned down a whole neighborhood.
I think that's something that could be put on the table, right? Because at first when you said it, I thought you were saying move the organization. Were they environmental terrorists? And I was like, nah. But some people actually feel that way about them. But the way the city handled it with the bombing,
that's what I was speaking of.
Yeah, that's 100% environmental racism. It's other things, including environmental racism, because it was a lot of other things too. But it was definitely including environmental racism, because they dropped a bomb on a city block. A bomb.
But even everything that happened after the fact, right? It's like that.
And they let it burn so that they could run them out the house, and then they shot them as they was like, "Come on."
So I think we should probably. I mean, not everybody's from Philly, and even people in Philly don't know the story. Can we kind of give them the story?
Yeah. Let's give it a story. But I was
Yeah,
go ahead.
that's a whole show. I was just asking, like, whether
Yeah.
you guys consider that, but the mayor dropped a bomb. It's so deep of a story because it goes back years before that. So many
There was several
documentaries made. Yeah,
The neighbors didn't want them in that neighborhood. They, they were kind of like the, they're kind of like the free people. You know what I mean? Like, They they did a lot of yoga on the lawn.
Listen, they believed in life, right? And they believed that everyone should have life, and that included animals, insects, everything. So,
yeah,
they lived on a block. So, to Kamari's point, some people consider them environmental racist because
they wouldn't kill anything or throw anything.
they wouldn't kill anything at all. And they raised their families to live on natural foods, and so it's a whole lot to it. But to make a long story short, they had static with the power structure here in the city, and they couldn't get them out. So they resulted in the city actually dropping a bomb on a residential neighborhood to get them to come out of this house that they were trying to get him out of. It's a lot to the story, so I'm not trying to like oversimplify it, but I know we only have so much time because we literally could do a whole show on this, and it's because there's a lot of angles, a lot of parts to that story, there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah, I would suggest everybody look it up. Only thing I would add to that, right? There was a running track record between this organization, the MOVE organization, that was started by John Africa. The first encounter, I believe, was 77.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And then they had another cop. Well, let me not jump over that. They had a shootout with the cops in 77, 78. And then fast forward to 85, they had another shootout with the cops, which led to
You can't fast
a
forward to
firebomb.
85 yet. You skipped over one of the things that the city had the most beef with is that Mumia Abu Jamal was part of that movement, and he, apparently, supposedly, killed the cop. The cop, by all other accounts, attacked him, and he defended himself. But for what the police reports say, my man been in jail since 1980, I think
82.
81, 82.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like that was another point of contention with them because he was part of the move. You can't skip over that because that's what caused the bombing.
That was one of the points.
That was one of the things where they were like, all right, they don't want to come out. Let's
that's why I said just summarize it, and Elizabeth tried to summarize in the comments too, because it's so much to that. It's a lot of nuance to that.
And just to add to Corey's point, because he's right, you can't just glance over that, right? I'll say this. In regards to Mia Abu Jamal, please look him up. By all accounts, I don't think anyone can say whether he shot or did not shoot. But what has been proven is that he did not have a fair trial. And that's been proven so many times. And so if a man didn't have a fair trial, why is he on death row? So those are the questions you have to ask. And again, I think if you put MOVE on the table, it's definitely up there. But let's start with.
But real quick though, Kamari, I want to make a point because I saw Jennifer's comment, but what the point I was trying to make is not even necessarily the bombing, right? If you look at what happened with those properties and how everything was handled after the fact, like after the bomb dropped, that's the part I was talking about. How that neighborhood, like even in terms of like not just the property ownership and how that went, but the different the environmental effect of dropping that bomb there. And how the powers that be handled that like years past. I mean, even up until a couple of years ago, there were some issues.
Right.
Yeah.
And we keep bringing it up, right? So the homes were rebuilt. The bidding system for that was very shoddy. The homes being bought were very shoddy, or being rebuilt were very shoddy. And so, yeah, to Jimmy's point, we've always had a problem with them.
But I think I to Jennifer's point that it's a little bit different. It is and it isn't, because here's the thing: the smoke that came off of those properties when they were burning was seen as far. I think they said as far as like Berks County, which is maybe about 80 miles away, because it was a massive, massive fire. So and then I have family members who were. I have a family member who lives a little bit further, maybe about 5 or 6 blocks further down. We couldn't even get over to it was my grandmother. My grandmother was living there and we couldn't even get to her. And it was done. And the thing that makes it very interesting is that it was done on Mother's Day. It was done on Mother's Day.
May 8th.
And and so again, so yes, it's not this continuous kind of environmental racism issue, but it definitely did affect the environment in terms of those who lived in a predominantly Black area, and the level of smoke and the level of soot that they were dealing with for weeks after it,
Yep.
because they wouldn't have done that if it was any other neighborhood. And I think that's the bigger thing.
Any other neighborhood with a bunch of white people in it. Because
Absolutely.
Philadelphia is a very sectionalized city.
We are the city of neighborhoods.
Yeah, so if that neighborhood had more white people in it, that wouldn't have happened.
I totally agree. Totally agree. So since we brought up MOVE, right? Because I do not want to do MOVE a disjustice, and it's particularly the MOVE bombing. Here's an article that I feel Vox did pretty good. This happened on May 13th, 1985. And so to all the points that Jennifer,
I thought it was May 8th.
It was May 8th. Because that was Mother's Day and my sister's birthday.
Yeah, that's
according to the articles, on the evening of May 13th.
It wasn't even the evening; it was early in the morning.
Yeah,
and the reason
right, but on the evening the shootout started, and in the morning they dropped the bomb. So I guess maybe it was May 14th.
So no, they dropped the. Well, yeah, I don't know, but they dropped the bomb. I'm pretty sure it was May 8th, because what happened is that, and the reason why I even know this to be so true is that one of the city solicitors that was involved in the call actually did a presentation while I was working as a city solicitor. So, so I think that is pretty. So that's why I'm just like, I don't think Vox got that information right, because it was the call he talks about that morning, and he said, "Yeah, I got a call Mother's Day, talking about what was going on."
Yeah, man.
So, and that's what I'm saying. So Jennifer says it was domestic terrorism. That's exactly what it was, but that's exactly what environmental racism is.
All of it is. All of it is domestic terrorism. But we'll talk about that as we get.
We can move on from it, because I think we have a lot of clear cut situations like Florida, like Cleveland, like LA, like North Carolina, like Texas. I mean, there's just so many. Chester. Hi, Chester.
But before we get started, let's do a real quick pit stop. What exactly is environmental racism, right? Let's set the context before we get too deep into the conversation. Now, don't kill me. I pulled a wiki. It's just the first stop to get some context, folks. That's it. And so what wiki calls environmental racism is a concept in the environmental justice movement, which developed in the United States throughout the 70s and 80s. The term is used to describe environmental injustice that occurs within a racialized context, both in practice and policy. In the United States, environmental racism criticizes inequalities between urban and ex-urban areas after white flight. Internationally, environmental racism can refer to the effects to the global waste trade, like the negative health impact of the export of electronic waste to China from developed countries. So that happens a lot. And actually, I believe it was Ben Chavis.
Guess what? I'm sorry, I mean to cut you off. I was looking at what Don put. Both of you guys are right. That's when Mother Day fell in 1985.
Right. It was Ben Chavis who actually came up with the term environmental racism. Environmental racism. And if you know Ben Chavis he was the former NAACP president. So just to give the context, right? But Courtney, you were talking about Flint, Cleveland. I've seen some reports about Newark, New Orleans. What else you got on the list?
Chester.
First of all, it's Newark. If you know people from there, it's not Newark, it's Newark.
Yes, but I fall between Newark, Delaware, and Newark, New Jersey. So every now and again I get confused.
It's Newark, man.
I don't know what the Jersey people say, but the Delaware people say Newark, and make it clear.
But Jimmy was making a point about how they say it in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's Newark.
Yes.
In case they watching, I ain't trying to get cussed out later, because a lot of my folks from out there be like, no, Newark.
It'll get deep.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. People don't play about their time.
Tell us about with some of the stuff that's going on in some of these places.
So Chester, I think, is probably the most interesting and close. I think we probably can find some things in Philadelphia. But Chester has a incinerator. It's the Covanta incinerator, An incinerator, just for people if you don't know, it's a trash burning facility. So it burns. It takes all the trash from the neighboring areas. I can't get clarification of everybody who sends trash to Covanta, and then whatever the ash or residue is laid over, it goes somewhere in Berks County, which is maybe like 3 counties over from Delaware County or 3 counties over from Philadelphia. Delaware County, Chester is in Delaware County. It borders Philadelphia County. I'm sorry, Delaware County borders Philadelphia County, but Chester is it's not the largest city actually in Delaware County, but it might be the city. There's not that many cities in Delaware.
Chester City might be the biggest, and then but Chester County, but whatever.
Well, yeah, let's not get in the weeds about that, y'all.
Yes, well, I think it's important. So Chester City is a city, but I believe Upper Darby is actually the biggest municipality, but it's not a city. So, but Chester is predominantly African American. And basically they are getting the ash and the soot in Chester County in Chester that's being burned is adversely affecting those who live there, and they're predominantly African American and they're predominantly poor. And I think Corey could probably share kind of the economic situation in Chester, because it was very working class, but it wasn't always as dire as it is right now. And Covanta, interesting enough, is that it's an older plant. So a lot of the scrubbing and a lot of kind of the filtering that's on newer plants, Covanta doesn't have and cannot have because it's so old. So basically, it's like, it's old, we're not fixing it, but we're going to continue to burn trash and y'all be great. And the interesting aspect of it is that the asthmatic rate in Chester and Delaware County is like, I believe, like 3 times the state average. So, we can't say exactly what it is, but I mean, all roads point to the burning of the trash in Chester.
Now, Courtney, you said scrubbing. Were you talking about like cleaning, or is that something special?
So scrubbing is actually on the stacks. Like they can put scrubbing things in the stacks when they're burning, when it goes out into the air. But for some reason, the stacks are so old that they can't actually install the scrubbers in there. And they don't want, I don't know, doesn't really matter. They're not actually putting them on there.
And that helps purify the air as it goes out?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never do that. So what other incidents have you seen that were really, really telling that environmental racism is happening?
So, I mean, I think Flint is a very, working class African-American community. And the government made a decision to say, you know what, I think they were rerouting. They decided to reroute the pipes, the water pipes from one place to another because it was, quote, cheaper. But they knew they didn't actually upgrade the pipes that were already there because they knew that there were some contaminants already in the pipes. So when you run water through the pipes, what do you think that does? It goes into people's homes. And of course, people, I mean, in Philadelphia, and I think Philadelphia actually has environmental racism, and we can kind of talk about some of the things that happen. But I mean, most people drink water from the spigot. I don't. I never have. And that's part and parcel because of the problems that Philadelphia had in the 70s. So I just never drank. So, but people were drinking from the spigot, the faucet, whatever you want to call it, spigot in Philadelphia. I don't know. And apparently, the levels of lead, and there were a lot of high level of contaminants based on those pipes. And people, unfortunately, were drinking it and they were becoming very ill. And not only were people were becoming very ill, but children were becoming very ill. And Corey can talk about this also, is that the levels of lead poisoning causes developmental delays and problems in just across the board. And these are permanent issues. Go ahead.
Which is why lead testing is required in homes now, right? Because the levels of lead was leading to higher levels of autistic spectrum students. And it was also leading to health problems that develop through the high intake of lead. Some of those health problems being neuro health problems, right? Because what lead does is that it in high levels, it blocks neural pathways. And so, it was leading to, with people who have COVID talk about brain fog. but lead does something very, very similar to a person over time. It's like a slow death. You know what I mean? Where, you know, with COVID, we can see it faster. It's the same kind of thing that happens to people, but over a longer period of time, because because the thing is, it gets in your system and it builds over time. And so, you know, with that kind of environmental racism, you know what I mean? Like, we got to be very, very careful.
I just want to say that, like, the Honorable Isabel Wilkerson has taught us that we live in a caste system, right? So this is all connected. It's like Corey said, she connected the dots for us pretty much with all of our conversations. And I say that to say that when you talk about environmental racism, it really boils down to the fact that when you look at that caste system, we are at the bottom, right? So we have to deal with a lot of these issues because I just put an article in the chat for you, Kamari, to see. About the Logan Triangle. A lot of that, and Corey's point earlier, it happens because people are willing to ignore and are willing to even try things in certain areas because of who the residents are, with no regard for what happens for them. I was just looking at Baltimore, in the inner city of Baltimore, which is historically been black, that they did a test between 1993 and 2013, and Baltimore has nearly 3 times the national rate of lead poisoning, right? And it was allowed to happen because of who the residents were. So I think that the thing about environmental racism, and I did a lot of reading based upon this topic, and thank you guys for all the articles. It just makes me realize that this is another war. You know, I always talk about the various wars that we're fighting, and I know that this is one that a lot of people don't even acknowledge. Right. A lot of people don't know that this is happening. They don't know this is going on, or even acknowledge it. Right. Because when you talk about the environment, right, it's almost like it's almost like me getting on Kamari's nerves because all I want to talk about is Bitcoin, right? And so where am I going with this, right? When you talk about environmentalists, right, you have this certain perception of what an environmentalist is. Like, it's a tree hugger, right? And you don't want to. You get tired of those people, but this is just another war outside of all of the other wars that we're fighting, right? That we have to be, first of all, we have to know that this is going on. So having these kind of conversations are a good thing. And I hope that for the folks watching, we can start to do research and understand what environmental racism is and understand how it's affecting our people. So so to me, it's a caste situation, right? So it becomes a race issue because of economics, because we just happen to be on the bottom caste. So it's actually both.
Gotcha. So let's take a quick minute and let's check in with the folks. So we're going to kind of speed through a lot of these. Jose, Don, Latoya, Missy, what's up?
Hey,
y'all?
what's up, y'all?
Hey.
Jose said his job is mandating PCR. Yep. So we're going to come back to that. We probably need to have a full show about that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Romaine.
Hey, Romaine.
Hey,
what's good?
Going on?
Latoya.
Hey, what's going on?
Can't be.
What's up, man?
Okay, this is back to the kind of the vax conversation. Oh, and Monica says she has the scallops. She has the scallops.
I got you, Monica. I got you recipes.
All right, Jen.
Just don't burn anything down. That's all.
How you, Jen? Glad to see you here. All the flooded towns. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to talk about Louisiana and how dirty they did them, and Houston.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
All right, Khan says, "Two of my friends live on the move block. They went through the whole ordeal. Yeah, it's crazy." All right, Jen talked about this earlier. I think mood tragedy is a bit the same as the systemic environmental racism present in the situations like Flint.
She said not the same.
Not the same, yeah.
Oh, not the same. But here's the thing, right? And Jennifer, I know you could appreciate this, right? The bombing came from the top. Good. The mayor at the time, the first black mayor at the time, stepped out and was not there. And then so the folks at the state troopers and the governor, they made the call. Same thing as Flint. The governor made the call. So Flint might have been a little bit more premeditated, maybe, but it's close. It's definitely in there. Terrorized black hippies are killed. Liz,
No, we were talking about just trying to like summarize it, and she was trying to like summarize it as fast as possible. It's just mad nuance because it's a lot with that.
Yeah,
I think Jim brought the point up too, because even black folks wasn't feeling them.
Yeah.
No. So it's like Miss Shakur, she's been on the run after killing a New Jersey cop, but it was shady, as New Jersey cops is along. Right, but she allegedly killed the New Jersey cops, and they said there was a lot of at play in there, just like Mumia.
Same thing with Mumia. That's why she was saying it.
Gotcha.
Similar.
All right, the city of Philadelphia put a target on the backs of MOVE members, and even their black neighbors didn't want to protect them. I'm going to reserve comment on that because that situation is so nuanced. Because I know
that's what I kept saying. That's why I kept saying it.
But I think it's the same. It's very much the same thing about the gun laws that were passed in the 90s and 80s and the 90s.
No, the gun laws were actually passed in the 60s and then revamped in the 90s.
Well, yeah, it was they had the crime bill of 86, and then was another thing that came through, like, what was it, 92, I think.
Yep.
So but I share that to say all of those conversations, actually, there were a lot of African Americans who testified in front of Congress basically saying, we need you to help us. And so it is very nuanced, because I think on one hand, you're just like, hey, I need you to do something about this situation. But then years later, you're like, oh no, not that though. That's not what I'm looking for. And I think, but again, I think we have to be very careful. It's like it's a six in one hand, half dozen the other, because at one side I'm like, yeah, I need you to do something about this, because from my understanding, like I said, my family lived a couple of blocks down on Osage. It was problematic for the neighborhood. However, I think there's it's even when you see how people with mental health, black people with mental health issues are dealt with versus white people with mental health issues. So the L&I with white people is completely different. The way they deal with L&I, when I say L&I, I mean license and inspection, how they deal with L&I issues with black people and L&I issues with white people. You're like, hey, Mr. Smith, please don't do that anymore. Or, hey, Mr. Johnson, we're going to, levy these fines, these issues. We're going to lock up your house. We're going to condemn you, all of these other things. So again, we always kind of tend to go from 0 to 30, 0 to 100 with us, but everybody else gets kind of time after time to kind of deal with an issue.
Well, that's the caste system, right?
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons why, it's difficult to call the cops on somebody who, looks like you, even if the cops should be called, because you know what I mean? Like, you call the cops, they end up catching the body. You're like, damn, that's not what I wanted you to do.
The crazy part is you call the cops, it's out of your control. That's why I never call. Like, it gets out of your control.
Hold on, folks.
Y'all bringing a gun to a fist fight.
Yeah, let's not get in the weeds right now. Jennifer says, what about South Philly refinery fires? Lack of regulatory enforcement and oversight. Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. Now, Willard brought this up. The MOVE bombing was on May 13th, 1985. It was the day before my senior high school prom. Remember it well, and I grew up in Chester. Most of my family still lives there. Chester is the only true city in Delaware County. Way before the trash plant, we had Sunoco polluting the environment. Drive south from Chester to Marcus Hook and smell the burning oil, and the smell of burning oil has always been strongly present.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, I don't live actually in the city of Philadelphia anymore. I live in Chester County now. And so I drive over that bridge every day to come into Philly. And that bridge he's talking about, a Sunoco plant is still there. Right?
No,
it's not Sunoco. It's not Sunoco anymore. It's still an oil refinery there.
Yes, but he was talking about in Marcus Hook. So that's further south.
Yeah, no, I know what Marcus Hook is. It's right next to the Delaware PA border.
Yeah,
right.
So that's what he was talking about.
So, but there's also one on the other side. So they was catching it from both sides because
and that's what Jennifer's talking about though. In terms
they
of
was catching it from both sides because the refinery in South Philly is right there on the water, and that right there borders on them too. So they was getting done dirty because that's southwest of the city. And so they were getting manhandled because they was catching it from the Philadelphia side and from the Delaware side, Delaware Marcus Hook side. Like, that's absolute cat. And then you was talking about them burning trash, and Chester was like a little mini chocolate city. It was like an 80% black city. And so, that's what happens. People will, but I think it's also to the point of someone who said it in the comments, it's also an economic thing, right? Because people with resources just move away from that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, right. And I learned
Hold on, let's go into these comments and come right back into that. All right, so Latoya says the sinking homes in Logan, cancer rates in South Philly, Southwest due to Sunoco. So, question is South Philly, Southwest Philly, a cancer hotspot?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
They have a lot of problems down the South.
Yeah, I know Southwest is. I was looking at some data on Southwest. They have like the highest rates of HIV, cancer. I'm like, no, Southwest is a whole different animal out there.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so Jen says it's a racial or more of an economic issue. Poor white people also deal with these issues. Yes, they do. Poor and many seem to rule the game. Yes,
power and money.
But this is the black wealth crime.
No. But hold on, though. I want to make a point about that because that the Honorable Isabel Wilkerson told us that because of the caste system, right? Even economic issues become race issues because we're at the bottom of that caste.
Yeah, they have to be better than us.
Yeah, so yes, it's an economic issue, but it becomes a race issue because of where we are in the caste system.
Yes. Right. And so here's the thing. I lived in Appalachia, or Appalachia, or however you want to call it. So Appalachia is Kentucky, West Virginia, a little bit of Ohio. And they are getting just manhandled by the coal industry and have been. And they have so they have what's called a lot of orphan diseases, and they're predominantly white. So orphan diseases are diseases that not enough people have. They're debilitating, they're problematic, but not enough people have them for the pharmaceutical industry to actually care. Right. So they have a lot of that because they're getting in it, like their water has acid mine drainage. So you can see it going into their waterways. And then even still, so you have that going on. But then even recently they had a chemical leak. I want to say I was living in West Virginia when this happened. I wasn't down in Charleston, but in Charleston they had a chemical leak into one of the rivers. And it basically caused, I have a girlfriend who has cancer, and they're pretty sure that her cancer had actually come from the chemical leak that happened in 2014. But I say that to say, yes, it does absolutely happen to white people.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I learned from as a kid watching Distinguished Gentlemen when Thomas Jefferson Johnson had to look out for a little white girl who caught cancer because of the nuclear plant.
Shout out to Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, so listen, I learned a lot from Eddie Murphy as a kid, man. Shout out to Eddie Murphy.
The other thing that we haven't talked about as environmental racism, but that was crazy was when we watched them with the fracking here in Pennsylvania, right? And the fracking here in PA, and the pipeline that they ran through. They was fighting about it in 2015, 2016 when President Obama was on his way out of and the thing is, that's why they were standing there getting hosed down in the middle of the wintertime and damn near freezing to death to protect their water supply. The crazy part is they was trying to kill them with water because they knew it was cold, and then they was spraying them down with water in the middle of the wintertime, giving them pneumonia and trying to anyway. But they was fighting to not have that run through there because they know what that does to the water supply.
Correct. So
in our government knows too.
Let's pull up Monica's comment real quick. 3 Mile Island and Central PA impacted a lot of poor communities. Cities like Harrisburg were hit hard by cancer and other medical issues as a result of a plane accident in 1989.
Yep,
I remember that well.
But to Corey's point, the reason why I know title or do any type of real estate at all is because I was an oil and gas attorney that I actually wrote title for fracking sites when I first got out of law school.
Yeah.
Oh, so you the ops, huh?
Yeah.
So, and interesting enough, just as if for a background if people don't understand, so fracking is basically pulling oil and gas from the shale, which is well below the water table. And they've always known that this oil and gas deposit existed at this level or at this depth. But the problem was that they didn't have the technology or the wherewithal to actually extract the oil and gas from the shale. But they ended up going down to like Oklahoma or Texas, which we can always assume what's going on with their water supply, to find out how to actually pull the oil and gas off of the shale. So they use high power water, and they also use solvents, chemical solvents. And interesting enough, the way that they would present it to people in poorer areas is they would say, "Oh, well, it's stuff that's under your kitchen sink." And I'm like, "Have you seen some of the stuff under the kitchen sink? Like, have you seen the warning labels?" And when they say it, it's like 0.000% of the solution, because the solution is majority water. However, when they pull the water back up, those solvents still remain. So there are some solvents, and they're drilling directly through the water table. And you have to make sure that even when you're drilling through the water table, are you making sure that they do a double cast? But even when they do a double cast, there's a large possibility that it will seep out. So you're leaving it down in the shale, which is actually in and under the ground. And there were a lot of earthquakes over there places that didn't have earthquakes before. I wonder why. And they're actually breaking up the shale as they're pushing it through. So yeah, we had an earthquake, and I was literally working as an attorney.
See,
and I was
All right, so
people
listen,
make stuff they shouldn't mess with.
we define what environmental racism is, right? We've highlighted a lot of the issues that quote unquote environmental racism has caused for many Black and brown folks, right? And even poor white folks, as many illustrated in the comments. What's the solution though? What do we do next? How do we start combating this?
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about. I think the first step is to acknowledge that it is something, right? So we're having this conversation now, but to be completely transparent, I didn't know that much about it until reading for the show. I knew it existed, you know what I mean? Like I told you, I saw Distinguished Gentleman, but I just didn't know how deep it goes, right? Until you start peeling back layers and layers. And what you see is you see capitalism at work when people are choosing profits over people, and they're kicking the can. So a lot of this stuff is just kicking the can. Like, look, I know this is wrong. Somebody else will deal with it. And, the chickens always come home to roost. So I think the first thing is to acknowledge that it exists. And I think there's a lot of things we can do, right? Having seats at the table within certain organizations, but also having our kids study these things. We don't really have any kids that study the environmental sciences, right? We need to really get in there and study that to see how we can improve our community by having people that look like us to know what is and what isn't, by kind of pushing our kids into the environmental sciences.
So by pushing our kids, does that mean the adults got to become aware about this as well?
I mean, that's what I said. That's the first part of it, right? We have to acknowledge that this is really something here, right? It's a whole other war. We talk about the war that's being fought from an economic standpoint. We talk about health. This is just another war. Education, politics. It's another aspect of it.
All right, Jennifer says that watch what the federal government is doing in the areas private industry has been militarized the local sheriff to use force to stop protesters. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, I would even I don't know if I would say that. Like, so yes, does it happen? But has private industry actually done it that way? No. So the sheriff actually, by law, has the right to enforce certain types of, protest laws, things like that. And again, normally these pipelines are usually on private property. Like they'll be running.
Not just pipelines though. We're talking about the whole kit and caboodle. I mean, when you look at the issue with not just sheriffs, but police forces have been militarized. That's been well documented. Even the new commissioner here outlaw with the use of the gas with the protesters here. I mean, that's a major issue that I really feel they're overstepping their bounds oftentimes.
But no, I'm talking directly to the quote. This is private industry has militarized the local sheriff to use force to stop protesters. That's what I'm saying. It's not private industry. It's actually the laws. And I think one of the things that in terms of how do we fix this, how do we get on top of this, as we actually look at the law. The law, some of these laws, you're like, I mean, there's some really interesting laws in the books. You're like, why is this still, like, for example, you can beat your wife in Fairmount, West Virginia on the courthouse steps as long as the stick is a certain like width. And so again, we have to be educated. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And again, we are subject to these laws. So we have to know what they're doing. But I agree with you is that the police and the sheriff and all of these other aspects have been militarized. I mean, you have SWAT teams. It's like you have a SWAT team. So you have a battering ram that you're using at somebody's door with a tank. You have a tank though? Like, so I agree with you. But I think it's a function of that our governments have actually allowed these enforcement arms to become militarized. And then private industry gets the benefit of it. So I know it's a slight nuance, but I think it's an important thing for us to understand, because if we're saying it's private industry, it's a lot harder to regulate private industry. But when you realize it actually is your government, it's a lot easier to regulate and deal with the issue because you can get at your government.
Got you. So Monica says one way to help solve the issues of environmental issues is to have people in the room that look like us. We do that by exposing young folks to career paths like urban planning and the sciences.
It was part of they actually talked about that in one of those articles you sent me, Kamari, about how when a lot of these issues come up, there is nobody black in the room that even is having these conversations. Like, it was in one of those articles.
But I like what Jennifer says. Yep,
exactly.
Not just a seat at the table, but using that seat effectively. Right.
Yeah, that's what everything. Yeah.
But we also need allies, and we need more of just one person in the room. Because again, I mean, I can say all day you're not doing that, but it's just me.
And guess what that all comes back to? That all comes back to capital. Because how do you get somebody a seat at the table? Yeah. You got to pay for that seat. So once again, it circles back to economics.
So Liz, I'm confused by this one. Are we talking about charcuterie boards again? Pig farms is another thing. Y'all going to let pork go? I've been let pork go, but I don't know what that's about.
So here's the thing: pork farms are actually known, apparently, to be toxic to the environment.
Yeah, they dirty as
hell. I didn't know that.
And they're not like
toxic. I've heard about the cows.
Like a lot of the farms, it's not necessarily the animal itself, but it's actually the farming.
How they process and everything.
Exactly. So to me, like, I actually only go to certain places to get my pork. Because I try to be, at least if I'm going to eat certain things, I need to at least know that it's ethically sourced. And that's part of the problem that we have, is that a lot of the things on a regular basis that we have are not ethically sourced at all. Like, even as much as we love sugar, I think there was one of the things that we talked about in the article we shared. Sugar plants put off a lot of carbon dioxide and smoke and soot in terms of their processing. So even the things that we think are kind of innocuous aren't.
And it's funny, sugar, which a lot of times is refined from corn, gets all these subsidies, like weird subsidies, and they're like profitable. It's like, why do they get all this money from the government?
But it's not even sugar, though. It's high fructose corn syrup. That ain't sugar. That's not sugar, but it's in everything.
That's why corn farmers get those subsidies.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they put corn in everything. And I mean, there's corn in the gas. I mean, there's corn everywhere. And I think one of the things that concerns me about even our food sources is by putting high fructose corn syrup in everything, your body doesn't process it the same as sugar. But it actually causes some real damage.
All right. So Liz, also the DAPL that they protested.
The Dakota pipeline.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Protested against DB reps in 2019. Gotcha.
Right. Referencing the people
right, the XL pipeline, right. All right, Monica says the EPA was created in the 70s to address environmental issues. They have a bunch of acts on the books, like Clean Water Acts and Pollution Acts, but it seems like the oversight is
well, that was one of the things that I was concerned about when President 45 was in office, because he was dismantling the EPA. Right. That was one of the things. I was like, hold on, homeboy. Like, yo, like my man was like F science. Like we 100% business. F science. He was like dismantling the whole EPA. He was getting rid of the jobs. He was talking about we not doing no enforcement. Like he was just wrecking the EPA.
That was one of his first acts. But I think something has to be said, right? Because
he said global warming isn't real. Like, I mean, he laid it out from the get-go what it was.
But I think something has to be said about the fact that our corporations, not capitalism, but our corporatism, is really killing the system, and they really don't care. And I don't get that. I don't get that at all.
kicking the can, bro. They don't care because they're not going to be here to see the effects of what's happening.
That's
Yeah,
the
but
thing.
their children will.
They don't care.
So,
But guess what? Let me teach you a secret real fast. Most people are selfish, and they don't even care about their own kids. But that's neither here nor there.
I agree with that.
That's true. But I think here's the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that even with the EPA, so I did some environmental work even in law school, and the EPA allows certain percentages of certain contaminants to be in water. It's just you just can't go too far. Like, oh no, you can have some of it in there, but it can't be over, like they call it particulate. So you can't have a certain level of them. And I think that's also a dangerous slippery slope because I think you have the ability now to change the rules. Like, okay, well, we allowed, 1%, but we can take it up to 5%. That's okay. But again, we already know that having any of it is problematic. So to the point about what Donald Trump was doing, as he was changing a lot of the rules and regulations in terms of what was allowable. So he was dismantling, and then the things that he kept in place, he ratcheted up in terms of what was allowable. Gotcha. And we're going to be dealing with this forever.
All right. So Jennifer says seats at the table can come from sponsorship. These decisions are made by board members, and we are experiencing a drop in the diversity on the boards because Black people don't get sponsored, and therefore don't make it to sitting on these boards. That's true. Yeah, man. And I see you super active tonight. Appreciate it. Everybody that's active, I hope you have also shared this conversation. Right?
Hey, man, listen, shout out to Jen, man. Jen is brilliant. Speaking of law school, that's who helped me in law school. Jen was Jen.
That's the connection. All right,
Jen,
I got it.
Listen, Jen gets to it. Jen is brilliant.
Yes, she does. But listen, for everybody that's watching, this is the Black Wealth Project Show. If you're new here, we do this every Sunday at 7 p.m. Right? And listen, like tonight, we're talking about environmental racism. How many times have you heard people in our community talk about environmental racism? It's a real thing, though. Like, it's a real thing. We talk about the money, and sure, we talk about the wealth or the health. Sure, but what about all the other
wealth and health go hand in hand?
Yes, they do.
What
do us a favor. Yeah. Do us a favor and share this out to other people who need to know about these type of conversations. Go ahead, Corey. What were you saying?
No, wealth and health go hand in hand, right? You can't build wealth if you ain't here to build it. So that's just, that's just the facts of the situation. So
Latoya said we need more food scientists. I would agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need more scientists. We need more everything scientists.
The woman that we had on our plate that talks about decolonizing your plate, she's amazing, yo.
Oh yeah, she's hilarious. She's one of the best people on IG. But listen, we need you take the word food out. We need everything scientists. Like we just have to really
Hold on, Corey. Hold on. Lobbyists make sure the effectiveness of the EPA guidelines are watered down. I agree. Indeed. Go ahead, Corey.
We need more data scientists also, right? So scientists, period, but data science especially, because all of these surveys and things that they do, none of those things are pointed directly at us unless they're trying to do something specifically to us, right? Because they're not trying to do anything specifically for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so we need, what they have is big data, right? If you noticed, all of the biggest corporations in the world are not oil companies anymore.
Listen, man, you trying to start me and Kamari off because I'm all about the data, and Kamari gonna tell me FOH to the data. So you about to start another debate.
I really appreciate if y'all stop lying on me because that's like a bold face lie.
All right. Hold up. They was there.
Hold on. We still got to get to these comments.
All right. Yeah. See, look.
My name is Kamari Ellis from the Boogie Down. Just wanted to
say. See. Okay. He don't want to have that conversation.
No, because I didn't say that. You just lied on me. All right, did Joe fix the EPA issue? I don't think Joe can fix the EPA issue.
I don't know if Jim Crow Joe is even awake these days. Like, when the last time y'all see Joe? Like,
all right, Latoya says, if you compare the allowances made here and our food sources as compared to foreign countries, even Canada, you'd be surprised. Chicken nuggets don't taste the same in Italy as they do here in the United States. That's facts.
You know what chicken nuggets taste like in Italy, Latoya? You fancy too?
Now, see, I'm jealous, right? So Jennifer gives Jimmy some love. She don't give me no love at all.
Because listen, I was explaining how brilliant Jen is. Like, you see, definitely
brilliant, and she's a pit bull in the skirt.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, J.A. Patterson. We need to have more investment in green technology and a green workforce. The way the mob controlled the construction unions. Racism is built into the infrastructure, so it's segregated us into the polluted environments. Imagine what pollutants are in Richard Allen that's on top of undiagnosed depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, etc. Imagine how they all exacerbate each other in the collective trauma. That's a fact. That's a fact right there.
That was all in one of the articles you sent about how if you go back and see the neighborhoods that we were put into because of redlining, that's where you'll see all the environmental issues. Like it's really all connected.
Yeah,
Right.
It's a construction.
And that's why I always talk about redlining. Like redlining really created
that was dirty. It was literally dirty.
Really created just about all these issues, but nobody really talks about that.
Listen, man, it's all connected. Like they say on Manifest, it's all connected.
I was going to say that. Man.
I still haven't gotten the Manifest.
Redlining combined with gerrymandering is absolute. Like, you want to talk about disenfranchising and not empowering people? Like, I've been talking about gerrymandering since I was in high school, right? Because I understand what gerrymandering look like. I lived in a gerrymandered district, right? Because the people that lived on my block, on one side of my street, we voted toward we voted in one church, and then the other people that lived literally 5 steps from me across the street had to go all the way like 4 blocks away to vote. And because they split my district literally on my street in half to split our votes, because my grandmother used to put our votes together. They literally split the district in half on sides of the street.
Hey, listen, that's how the game is played. It's a book about that too. It's called Rat Fuck.
Yeah, man.
All right, so Monica says Saul offers food science as a focus. It's a great option for high school to help fight the agricultural fight. Facts.
I used to love the high schools in Philly. There was so much diversity in the high schools in Philly.
Support black farmers too, yo. Support black farmers. But.
All right, so Latoya says I had chicken nuggets from Rome Corey. That's that bougie black talk right there.
Oh man,
I love it.
Yeah, were there charcuterie boards out there too?
Black wealth. Listen, normalize black wealth.
Karan says, "What's up, Karan? Hope you feeling better,
Yeah,
brother."
Everybody, get well, bro. Get well.
Yeah, everybody tell Karan get well. That's all in the book in The Color of Law. Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, again, we've identified what environmental racism is. We talked about the issues clearly highlighted. We talked about some of the solutions. Right. Anybody else got any other solutions?
I was going to ask you, what was your solution? Did you talk about your solution, Kamar?
Yeah, Kamar, what you got to say?
I think we have to get more involved in politics, right? Because policy is at the seat of this, and not just in a superficial way, not just because I know everybody says the votes don't work. Politics is so much deeper than just voting. It's voting, it's money, it's legislation. It's not just voting. And I think we have to get rid of that misnomer. And again, I'm not saying that we don't need money, because we do need money, but votes can go a long way. And we've seen where you could have the lower amount of money or the lower amount of capital, but you've got a better coalition, a better field team, and you're still able to win. We saw that in Ohio recently with the race with Nina Turner and the other opponent that beat her. I can't think of her name right at the moment.
Yeah, and if you get some data, you have some good data. Data helps too.
Yes, data absolutely helps.
I just want to get you to say that on the record. That's all.
I said it before, Jimmy.
All right. Listen, all right, because
listen, y'all.
I saved the files, bro.
People,
I got our messages.
Me and Jimmy be having these deep philosophical conversations behind the scenes, and so sometimes we go a little left and right with it, and he don't like that. That's all.
No. I know. You just be going. You be to prove his point. Kamari will go way out of pocket to try to prove his point. Tell me that they don't.
Not really.
I got the listen. I got the files, bro.
Listen, I enjoy our conversations, so a lot of them are thought experiments for me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and so I'll be honest, I don't get to do that a lot. So when me, you, Corey, Courtney, Malik, Tracy, well, Tracy don't do it as much, but when we do that, one, it's fun. Two, I learn something. Like Corey said something early on in the tonight's show. He says when people personally attack him, he doesn't take it personally because he can learn something. When we're having those dialogues, I'm giving some of my thoughts, but I'm also looking to learn just as much as give. And I feel like we don't do enough of that.
Yeah.
Like if we keep doing the same thing that we've always done, basically, if we keep thinking the same way we've been thinking, we're gonna keep getting the same shit.
No, you got to be challenged, right? So,
Right.
so I mean, so now I got you. Now I got you to go on the show and talk about the importance of data. That's all I want to do.
Let me tell you why though, right? Because I've had therapy, right? That's one of the things that I've had. That was one of the things that I learned in therapy. Because one of the things I learned in therapy is that 99% of the time when somebody attacks you, you don't have to deal with that person. You have to deal with what they said, but you don't have to actually deal with that person. And so if I have control over that situation, whereas, all right, I can internalize what they said, look at myself, but if they're constantly attacking me, I don't have to deal with that person. It's cool, because if I don't want to have to deal with it no more, I just stop dealing with that person. If that person always has something negative to say, they don't want to, you know what I mean? But
you know what? That's how you grow and that's how you learn, though. You don't grow just by being around people that just co-sign everything that you say.
You can't, because you never, like, if you grow, it's the echo chamber effect, right? I don't like echo chambers.
Absolutely. Me and Corey go at it every day.
Every single day.
That's our conversation, but that's what it's supposed to be.
All right, Monica says, yes, Corey, gerrymandering is employed when redlining doesn't quite work the way they want it to.
Yeah, exactly.
Facts.
They put us all together, and then we start powering up. They're like, whoa. Let's take that up.
Jose wants to join the Black Bougie team. He says chicken nuggets in Amsterdam actually tastes like chicken.
Jose be
chicken
already
air.
Jose is on the bougie side. That's not
already been there. He ain't
he the charcuterie guy too. He's a charcuterie boy.
To the bougie team.
All right, Jen says you got to get more money and ownership on all levels so that we can get power.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
politics helps, but we got to pay the right politicians. Absolutely, greed is a hell of a motivator.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Yeah,
like
man.
Corey has a saying, right? People going to people.
People going people.
We know people.
That's Corey's greatest quote. The shortest one is his greatest quote.
Yeah, people going people. We know we got to play to that. You know, the honorable Dr. Claude Anderson, because he should get an honorable tag as well. Says the same thing. So I would encourage everybody to read his works as well. So yes, I agree. But here's the thing, right? We can talk about money, we can talk about politics, but if we're not ever united on anything, none of this ever gets done.
Which goes to the point that we were making earlier in the show.
Yep.
Like, everything don't have to be a battleground, right? Some of the things that we can agree on, and then some of these things we can disagree on, and we can agree that there's certain criteria that has to be met, period, right? So we were talking about with COVID restrictions. Mask up, wash your damn hands, stop touching people, stop being dirty, right? We can all agree on that, right? But
tell that to all the white celebrities out there who for some reason this one keep telling us how they don't wash their hands
without having to see dirt on your body, right? Like, the more clean showed y'all how to clean yourselves in the 13th, 14th, 15th century. So y'all should have known that. But anyway, they showed y'all how to do it. You should have took heed of that.
See, Jensen, she challenged you too, Kamari. Everybody got,
Yeah, but here's the thing, Jennifer, that's like her favorite thing to do. But where's the love, Jen? Can I get some love? Jenny got some love. I just get challenged. Like, what's going on here?
That's because you are the contrarian, bro. You're the contrarian.
There's a conspiracy against Kamari by all the black female attorneys in Philadelphia.
That was a shot at Courtney. You see that, Courtney? You
ain't
even saying anything.
Definitely a shot at Courtney. She's always beating on me.
She could have straight.
I'm not even. I don't justify unless you actually call me by my name. I'm like,
if it ain't directed, it ain't respected. You heard it, Kamari. If it ain't directed, it ain't respected. No,
but listen, y'all.
We gotta show each other more love.
But getting back to Jen shows me plenty of love. That's my sis right there. Like this is all jokes, right? Y'all know this is a town hall meeting. This is all family, right? So it's one community.
No, for sure.
But what else can we do? So we got a couple things, right? We said we get our money up. Some people said we go into the sciences, food scientists, broad scientists. But what can we do right now? What can we do today? If we walk out of here today, what can we do? Like, how do we put this
one thing that I'm going to take away from this is to actually talk about this a little bit more. Because like I said, I was aware of it, but I wasn't aware of the extent till I started like going down the rabbit hole of reading articles and watching videos. So like something that you can literally do right now is just have these conversations and actually talk about this to other folks. I'm interested to see, like, for the folks that are watching, like, how much about environmental racism like did you know? Because to me, this was a great learning experience for me.
Now, Latoya says, can we talk about how the highway system was environmental and domestic terrorism as well? Facts, right? And when Courtney was talking about this, we talked about that as well. A lot of the black towns have highways built through them. A lot of the quote unquote black economic centers in these cities across the country have had highways in the middle or just built right through them. Tulsa, I know, is one of them. There's some others too. I can't think of off the top of my head, but I know Tulsa is one of them.
Southwest Philly.
Yeah, right. Southwest Philadelphia.
What highway would run in the middle of it? What highway?
Yes, the Schuylkill.
Yeah, the Schuylkill Expressway.
But the Schuylkill doesn't run through Southwest.
Yes, it
well,
does.
Yeah, I know you're right. You're right.
What are you talking about?
It's on the edge. All right.
It's actually, and it splits the neighborhood on it. Like that area over there, it splits it. It splits it.
Man.
Yeah, the airport right there. And
well, no, I think you got to come further up by Baltimore and Washington Avenue.
Grace Ferry, like it's
Grace Ferry
right there. And
but also, go ahead, Corey.
No, that's it. I mean, you can see it. You can actually look like, well, what happened before this was here.
But I think those were more white areas than no. That's why I'm kind of, and I don't know for a fact, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
But no, I was just going to point out that, like, to Jen's point about like ownership and power and just resources, I think that's part of it too, right? It's part of everything we talk about.
Yeah.
I was watching this past week in Philadelphia. It was hot as hell. Like one of those days, it was like with the heat index, it was like 110, something stupid.
Dumb oppressive.
In NBC 10 here, we're talking about these heat islands, and they were talking about how Huntington Park and Strawberry Mansion, and they were saying there, you look at the map, some of the poorest sections in the city, they're the hottest. And one of the reasons is because of resources. People can't afford to get like, the silver roof. They have the old black tar roofs, which are a lot cheaper, but because of that, it brings so much heat. So they took like these drones up and just was flying over the city, and you can see in the poor areas. I didn't even notice this before. In the poor areas of the city, you see a bunch of black roofs. Just that one little they said that one thing has an impact on the entire environment. But that goes back to resources, right? The further you go out, when you go into the more affluent neighborhood, you start seeing the lighter roofs. Even if the properties themselves are the same, and it's something they actually showed, and I was like, wow, I never knew that. But so resources, we talk a lot about how economics is tied to everything. That's a part of this as well.
Facts.
So,
all right, Latoya says we can be more aware of our carbon footprint. I agree. Did anybody see that report that came out this week? That said,
I got pushback. Hold on.
All right. Go ahead, Corey.
I got some pushback on that. We need to be more aware of the corporate carbon footprint and the government carbon footprint. These corporations will have you believe that the general human populace is the reason why the carbon footprint is the way that it is. And that's absolutely untrue and false. The reason why the carbon footprint is the way it is because corporations create like 80% of the toxic carbon footprint that we got going on the planet. And they want you to make up for their misdeeds by watching your carbon footprint. Not that we shouldn't do this, because as human beings, we are all responsible for the planet. But it ain't going. All the tree hugging in the world is not going to help the planet if the corporations of the world don't stop killing the planet.
But to Latoya's defense, I asked the question, what can we do? And that is one of her responses.
Yeah, I'm not pushing back against watching our carbon footprint.
But you put both hands up.
Yeah, because that's not in the hands of the people.
You said he should have did one of these. Like it's one hand out.
No, that's two hands, because that's not in the power of the people. That's in the power of the corporations. All the people in the world, the carbon footprint put together doesn't nearly equal what just the U.S. government's carbon footprint is around the world.
Right, but when I ask,
we can't allow that to become. We can't lose sight of where we should be really focusing on.
Right, but again, the question is, what can we do? That's why I'm pushing back. You
Watching
can't tell me that. You can't
something
tell me that we can't be more conscious about the
we
planet.
can. But we
That's all I'm
got to
saying.
really focus on where the issue really is.
I mean, I agree with that too.
Well, I think when you live a healthier lifestyle, I think you're also going to help kind of your environment. Because, for example, I mean, if you composting is good for the soil and it's good for everybody. You know, there are certain things that, you know, we think about what we're doing and what we're using. Even just the way that we use like plastic bottles, we probably should be converting all the glass to make sure that, you know, those BPAs are not getting into our system. So I think there's a couple of things that, to Toya's point, that we can do in our own households to, yeah, we can reduce our carbon footprint, but we can actually improve our health by doing some of these things. Because, you know, we do really get exposed to a lot of different things on a regular basis.
Yeah.
All right, Les says we truly need to unify. We're watching the next round of war and war victims who spend the last 20 years being trained overseas, being forced out of their country. They're coming here.
Yep.
We got to stop arguing over simple things. I agree. I so agree. All right, Jennifer says, I know a lot because I teach ethics, and it's one of the many ethical issues humans encounter. Unfortunately, it's the last topic we cover and is glanced over.
Absolutely. Especially in law. Like, they're like, yeah, you need an ethics credit. And they're like, oh, well, we just put ethics into here. It's like, no, you need a full class, y'all. But it really is like an afterthought. It's like, oh, yeah, I still need ethics credit.
But isn't that crazy though? Like ethics, like the fact that we look like ethics is glanced over. That's crazy.
But Courtney and Jennifer, right? Can you really teach ethics? I mean, is it something that can be really taught and absorbed and
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely you can.
Yeah. Don't steal from your clients. Don't have sex with your clients. Yeah, you can teach that.
I mean, you can get, because the thing is, like, you know, again, like we talked about earlier, a lot of things in the world are nuanced. You give people specific situations and see how they will react to it. A lot of times people are, you know, make a long story short, yes, you can.
Yes. Jennifer says you teach awareness, but yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, because a lot of people just don't even think about it. They're just like, this is what I wanted to do. I mean, Corey says people are going to people, and you're like, don't people that way. Thank you.
And that's the point of, like, I was talking about scenarios. A lot of times people aren't even aware.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jay says politics is tough without getting on one issue. We don't have a black power group or a black issue that we have lobbied behind. We have HUD housing is bad, but also 40% of blacks live near public housing and share the same school districts. Only 6% of whites live near public housing. Redlining never stopped. It's the problem, but also can be the solution if we get on the same page. I mean, J.A. Patterson, I agree with you, but here's my frustration with when our folks say there's no agenda. Why can we create one? We don't have to wait for the muckety mucks.
Man, we created one. We created a few.
Can we get 3 people in the room, 4 people in the room, and say, boom, boom, boom. This is our agenda. This is what we
Yo,
rock.
listen, when black people created an agenda for black people, they got clapped at, so people stopped doing it.
What people did this? I mean, there's all these separate groups.
There's been multiple people who have created an agenda, multiple black people who have created agendas for black people. And those people get shot at and clapped at the hardest.
This is true, because everybody's like, well, who, you know, because
who are you?
It's very difficult.
Black Coalition.
I told y'all how we got to move, and I'm not gonna repeat it, because I got kind of. I'm chilling. I'm chill. I'm just telling you.
Say that again.
I'm chilling.
Yes. All right. So, but what I would say is, right, the difference between what I was talking about is, let's start with 3 or 4 people. You don't need to broadcast it to the masses. And then those 4 people then say, hey, let's move from there. I think we start too broad, too wide. Courtney talked about this a couple weeks ago. We broadcast too much. So.
We talk too much. I say this all the time. Yes. I say this I at least say this at least once or twice a week, because I'm always seeing something. Reason why a lot of people have been getting jammed up, especially with PPP loans, it's just like little stupid stuff. You're putting up too much. Keep your business to yourself, but you're so busy trying to be seen is that you're getting seen by the wrong people, and then you got the federales at your door. You got the alphabet boys.
Like I told Kamari before we even started the show, I said, yo, more people want fame and notoriety than anything else. I think honestly, like I want to do some sort of test. Like I think that some people would rather be famous than even wealthy for that matter. Like the attention, people love it. Attention is a drug. It's right up there with like, crack, sugar, attention.
I got a homie that used to own part of Baseline a few years ago, and he said attention's worse than a drug.
Listen, man.
There's another drug that reminiscent. The past is also a drug, right? Because people get stuck with either in the trauma of their past or how great it was. We don't focus on the present and the future enough.
Yeah.
All right, so Jennifer says our carbon footprint is generated by our dependency on corporations. Our dependency drives demand, but they won't allow us to become independent. It's not economically sustainable. That's why folks can't collect rainwater in California.
You can't collect rainwater nowhere in the country.
But that's the other thing. I mean, that's also the issue with Bitcoin and crypto. Like the government is trying to regulate it because people are getting independence. They're going outside.
Because they can't control it. That's the thing.
Yep. But
Listen,
that's the whole thing. Like, can you really control somebody collecting rainwater like outside their door? Not really. But you can pass laws to say you shouldn't do, or you'll be fine.
All the vacant lots in North Philly, if I was to grab some up and just start planting vegetables, they would come after me.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's
you know what I mean? Like, think about that. Like, I'm taking an eyesore and growing food. They would come after me.
Yeah, they would be on your top.
All right, Jay says Corey is right. We don't have to push back we have to push back on the corporations. We need to put them on blast because the lobby and control a lot of policy. It's within our power to get some. Comments just jumped. Let me give me 1 second, people. Memento.
It's the next one. Yeah, is Monica. Yep, that's it.
All right, you can't teach people to be ethical, but you can teach ethics. Okay. Okay, that was kind of the point I was making, Monica, but I get it. All right, black folks are not a monolith, so it's a challenger to unify. We all don't have the same goals. Yeah, I hear that all the time, Jen. But every other group does it. Like, no group is a monolith. The Jews aren't a monolith. The Italians aren't a monolith. The Chinese aren't a monolith, right? But they figure out a way to get on the same page.
Republicans aren't a monolith, but they get down to lay down. And I'm not saying Republicans. They just
they just whatever the flow is, that's where they go.
That's where they go. They just go. And I'm not saying that I idolize that because I'm like, oh no,
that's trash, but that is what it is.
But it is what it is. And I'm like, why is it? It's like we're like herding cats. It's like, no, I don't like what the line says on the third page, the second paragraph, second sentence. Huh?
Because most of us don't want freedom. We enjoy it, right? We enjoy it. And there's another part of us that just want to be the oppressor ourselves. A lot of us don't want freedom.
Yeah.
We want to hold the power of freedom over other people.
We want to become the oppressors on our own people is what a lot of us want.
Because we're on the bottom caste.
One man was eating steak and he was like, ignorance is bliss.
I mean, our guy, Mr. Baldwin, with the greatest pen alive, said to be black and aware in this country is to be angry. Basically paraphrased.
Yeah.
All right, Latoya says we need black folks who aren't self-serving entering politics. That's hard. We aren't a monolith, but we need them to be not for sale. So that's hard because
that's not true. We need them to be for sale. We just need to actually.
Well, wait a minute. But that's hard because you need money to win politics, to Jimmy's earlier point.
No, but you know what? I've seen people.
Let me finish. A lot of us don't contribute to campaigns at all.
True.
So
but it's the system too, and I'm pretty sure all you guys have seen people who meanwhile have great ideas, but when they get that seat of power, it's like the system is so strong. Even if they want to do good work, sometimes they're not even able to.
Not even allowed to.
That's a good point. But
they can vote all they want. They can bring all of this stuff to. The thing is, if they don't have the relationships, if they don't have the sway, then none of the ideas get brought to fruition. You can have all the greatest ideas in the world. You still in a governmental system, your ideas just don't get brought to fruition just because you want them to be done, which is why you can't expect people to do things right away.
Well, I think seniority and tenure is, but I think one of the problems that we have, but that I've personally seen on at least black electeds, and I can say that kind of on just a couple of different levels, and not that it's a problem, but the thing is that if you look at all the indictments that have happened over the last 10 years, it's been about money. And
Talk
when
about
it's
it.
been about money, it's been about relatively small amount of money.
amounts of money.
And so again, it's that, the way that you
Paquito.
you really have to get them, everybody has to get their cake up. I mean, it's unfortunately, it's really about money, because if you go into a position and you're not beholden to anybody, you're not getting jammed up on the nonsense. You're not getting jammed up for a $1,600, Tiffany bracelet. You're just not. Because you're just like, I can do that myself. Or you're not being accused of doing that. You're not being
But
accused.
it also helps that the other person on the other side of that was getting these lavish roofs and trips and all this other stuff. Who was a black guy. But, I digress.
Hey, listen, man. Did he get a black roof or did he get the silver one, though?
I'm sure he got the silver one because that's out of this world. But it is.
But I also think, even with looking at the heat index to Jimmy's point, it's actually a lot warmer in those areas, even in the wintertime. Because I'll leave Mount Airy and go down to North Philly. I'm like, did y'all get snow? Because we have like 3 inches on the ground.
They're like, no.
They're like, yeah, we got some, but it's gone. Huh? Like, I mean, now Mount Airy does sit up a little bit higher. So they'll say north and west of the city, we will get more snow because of wherever our elevations are. So there's a lot going on there, but it is very problematic. But what was the post that LaToya said?
Folks are starving for attention because their inner child needs healing. Amen.
Ooh.
Amen to that. Oh, Lord.
Ouch.
Right.
LaToya out here preaching the whole sermon.
She put the clap.
Hey, listen, man. That's why Instagram is so successful. That's exactly why it works.
Yep.
That is true. Well, all these social medias to a certain degree.
IG got something, but I don't know what it is about Instagram, but it's like they figured something out, and it's probably something they studied. They probably have data, but it's different, yo. Instagram, Instagram is different than everything. I don't know what it is, but people do stuff on Instagram that it's just different.
Yep, the black family needs healing. That's where unity starts. I agree with that, Jen.
Yep.
You got
me. Absolutely.
I'm sold. Well, listen, folks, this has been a great interaction. Again, somebody going over, or all of y'all going over to the Black Wealth Project group. I want to see what other topics you want us to address going forward. All right. As always, y'all know we are here every week at 7 p.m. The Black Wealth Project. We will be back next week on 7 p.m.-ish. All right. And we hope to see y'all there. As always, we're always humble and gracious that you chose to spend your time with us on this Sunday night. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be with us. That says a lot, and that means a lot to us. So we'll see you next week, 7 p.m.
Shout to JA. I don't want no parts of that, bro.